Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Monday, hosted, of course, on the Vi Media channel. Thank you for tuning in and welcome back. It's been a while. Today, we got a lot of stuff to talk about, and as always, please, we have a ton of videos and tutorials and everything on this channel talking about everything under the sun, digital marketing, from building websites to SEO to ads, local service ads, etc. So if you have it, please, after you listen to this, of course, go and look if we got some other content that you'd be interested in, because we got a lot of free stuff, a lot of good information on this channel that is, useful to people in marketing, to people building businesses, to business owners, to those in executive positions, etc. So today, what I wanted to talk about, a few different things. So we got a few different topics. The first topic I wanted to discuss was about generative engine optimization, right? So ChatGPT, large language models, Perplexity, Google's AI overview, etc. Unlike traditional, well, I should say compared to traditional SEO that, optimizes for rankings and, of course, clicks, GEO, which just, consider this, large language model optimization, optimizes for mentions, citations, and recommendations, right? Inside, obviously, the AI-generated answers. Think about it this way. When someone types a question into ChatGPT, Perplexity, etc., the AI doesn't send them a list of 10 links to click, right? It reads across dozens of sources and synthesizes one answer. And obviously, the question you ask yourself, or, your clients ask you is, is my business one of those sources it's pulling from, right? Is my business showing up? So AI and large language model search is still a small percentage of overall traffic to companies' websites, but of course, it's only going to increase over time. As people start to use these large language models, they use it more and more, even for, basic, right, Google questions that before you just go into Google and ask. But now, those people that are fully adopting, Grok or ChatGPT or whatever it is, they're using them, these platforms, for a large majority of their searches, right? And as more people continue to use these platforms, obviously that means that more people, are going to be using those platforms to hopefully find your business. And what I've talked about previously on this podcast is that for the most part, it was over 90% of searches for local-based businesses for the most part. If you service people locally, if you're a home service company or a law firm or whatever, and the majority of your clients are locally, that's how that was before. And that's starting to change. It's not changing drastically, but just because you rank number one on Google now does not, officially mean that you're going to show up every time in large language models, right? And we want to have it so that way, obviously, if you show up in Google well, you're also going to show up in the large language models well. So, when it comes to local service companies, right, when a homeowner is asking, ChatGPT or Grok or whatever platform that they're using, who's the best insulation company near me, or what should I look for in a roofing contractor, you want your client's name or your company's name, content, and expertise to get what's cited, right? If you're not in the AI answers, you're effectively invisible, to a portion of this market right now that is searching for your type of business. Obviously, the AI, when you're searching, doesn't paste the full prompt into a search engine, right? It breaks down the question that you're asking into smaller subqueries and searches for each one separately. Obviously, after that, it's going to look for content that is clear, structured, authoritative, and trustworthy. So that is the most, the thing that's the most important right now is that the content needs to be clear, structured, authoritative, and trustworthy. These engines evaluate content based on meaning, clarity, and credibility. They don't reward volume, they reward understanding. So the strategy is obviously more nuanced than traditional SEO. Content structure matters as much as keywords, right? So clear headings help AI identify which sections answers which questions. So putting answers early in sections make them easier for AI to find and extract. Authority signals are critical as well. So primary factors include EEAT signals, which demonstrate experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness through structured content, external citations, and established authority in topical domains. So essentially what that means is make sure your team members have bios, your companies have credentials visible on the site, and you're being cited by reputable third-party outlets. Make sure that the content freshness is huge, right? AI has a recency bias. When content becomes more than 3 months old, AI citations drop off sharply. So you need to be revisiting the content on your website essentially almost once a quarter. FAQ sections are hugely important, and they have been even for traditional SEO, but now even more so for large language models. Use schema markup generously, particularly with FAQ pages, organization, article, and product types. This structured data is going to help AI understand your content from a contextual standpoint, making it easier to reference, because that's all they're looking for, right? Is to be able to reference it back. So SEO is the foundation that large language models are built on. If your SEO is strong, more than likely your GEO is going to be strong. But with that said, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to be 100% successful, because these two strategies are starting to separate from one another. Whereas, like I said before, and really for the past couple of years, it's been, hey, if you rank on Google, you're going to show up in ChatGPT. But that is changing. So make sure you make those changes I just talked about previously. Obviously, we have ChatGPT starting to run ads, and I believe I talked about this actually on the last Marketing Monday that we went ahead and recorded. That ChatGPT is going to start running ads. Pricing starts at $60 CPM with a $200,000 minimum commitment, limiting early access to enterprise-level advertisers, so good luck, small businesses. That $200,000 minimum puts it out of reach for most small and middle-sized businesses right now, but this is absolutely the time to understand how it works and prepare, because the platform will open up over time, just like Google and Facebook did, right, in their early days, and just like Google is talking about implementing it with Gemini and AI Overview. ChatGPT uses conversation-based targeting, matching ads to users based on 3 signals: the topic of current conversation, the user's past chat history, and their previous interaction with ads. So if someone asks ChatGPT about project management software, they might see an ad for relevant SaaS tool. If someone's asking about home renovation, they could see a roofing company ad, right? The targeting is based on the intent within the conversation, not demographic data. Ads will appear at the bottom of the responses, clearly labeled as sponsored and visually separated from organic answers. And of course, Google has continued to make it harder and harder to tell the difference between the sponsored post and non-sponsored post. For the majority of us, I think we're still able to tell the difference. I think the majority of us honestly don't care if they're clicking on sponsored or not. But at first, right, it was a big thing, and I still hear all the time, do people click on ads? I will say, for the most part, yes, right? People obviously still use ad blocker and things like that. So some people don't get fed ads, but that's, of course, why you want to have a combination strategy of making sure you're showing up on ads on Google as well as obviously organically on SEO. So you don't only have to rely on paying Google for those opportunities. So why is this a big deal for all of us marketers and for business owners? It's because it's opening up a new advertising channel, right? One that sits at the intersection of search intent, conversational AI, and decision-making. Unlike traditional ad platforms where users browse passively, ChatGPT users are actively asking questions, comparing options, and making purchase decisions in real time. I'm curious to see how this is going to work, right? Because for the most part, when I'm doing active research into different products, I don't know if an ad, like if I'm looking for a SaaS product, I'm doing a bunch of different research. I don't know if an ad is necessarily going to be something that's going to put me over the edge. Of course, maybe I'm looking for a specific type of SaaS product. I'm comparing 3 of them and I never heard of the 4th person that, comes across as an ad. So that's entirely possible as well. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes and really what the cost is going to be, for a click, for an actual opportunity, and what this is going to lead to moving forward. But I see this as similar to, Google search ads, right? So, what businesses should be focusing on? Build GEO optimized content so your brand is already being referenced organically. Watch for these platforms to open and add advertiser access. Understand, of course, that these changes are going to affect the advertising landscape. So, those are the two things I want to discuss today. Is really important from an SEO standpoint, making sure that you are actively doing things on your website to not only improve your rankings on Google, right, but also to improve your rankings in Grok, ChatGPT, Claude, and all of the other large language models that are currently being used. And, I highlighted some of the more broad aspects. I didn't get into a bunch of detail. Feel free to, reach out to us at any time. If you ever have any questions, Vibe Media, we're here to help. Just because, you're not our client and you're not paying us doesn't mean that we can't be helpful. So feel free to reach out to us or comment here, on this video if you have any questions on what we talked about. Keep an eye out for these platforms that are going to be adding in advertising as that comes across, because I think the people that are going to get in first are going to be able to have the best opportunity to scale. Because if it's like any other platforms, history matters a lot, and, conversion data and all of that stuff. So the longer that you have that data going, the first in, I could see that being very beneficial and working well for a lot of those businesses that do it correctly. If ChatGPT and these other platforms actually, do it correctly as well, and, are actually putting your company's ads in front of the right people. And that's going to be the biggest thing is, hey, just because I'm advertising on here, I'm not getting any leads, I'm not getting any opportunities. So SEO, ChatGPT, GEO, keep this stuff in mind when you're talking to marketing companies, when you're establishing plans specifically for this year. I think one of the biggest things that's going to be helpful for is, simply look at that FAQ, look at schema, and make sure that stuff is being set up properly, right? Again, you want to be establishing those authority signals of expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. That is all the time we have for today. Please look back at all of our other Marketing Monday episodes. I try and do this weekly. I haven't been doing this weekly. I plan to going back to doing this weekly because there's a lot of stuff coming this year in marketing. There's going to be fundamental changes to how, ads and paid ads and stuff like that is going to work. So stay tuned, and thank you for all your support. Talk soon. Bye-bye.